Thank you, Chair. It's essentially about this IHAP process that is going on at the moment. But before I come on to that, just in relation to what you've just said about the military covenant there, the military covenant is this fantastic thing. If it works, there's a study out today by SAFA, it says 17% of people think it works in the forces at the moment, and that over half haven't even heard of it. And I just think that these things are fantastic, but we need to kind of change how we look at this stuff, not what we're putting into the system, which is lots and lots of brilliant things, but actually how the blokes see it, what it means to them, how they can access this care. And I think, once we change the way we look at these things, that's when we will get a real difference in how we look after people who are going through, who may fall upon hard times when they've left. Anyway, that's for another day. The ambulance chasing lawyers, I don't particularly like that expression because they will do what they need to do, but in the UK have played a significant role in the wake of Iraq. We also now have an IHAT investigation, allegations of unlawful killing and ill treatment by UK armed forces in Iraq. What needs to be done to maintain proportionality in these matters, and in particular to ensure reasonable judicial treatment of service personnel who have often had to make very hard decisions in extraordinarily demanding circumstances. And I know that on this particular issue, you have worked extraordinarily hard to try and expedite this process, but the fact remains that we are still, the inquiry was set up by this commission because we are told sort of one thing by the Ministry of Defence or the Minister that, no soldier will hear from anyone other than an MOD individual first, looking after them through this IHAP process, and yet we have hundreds of people get in touch saying that these teams are sort of turning up to bases, threatening to arrest people, going to old girlfriends' houses from 2009, 2010, and the impression is that this has just got completely out of control of what is a government investigation. And again, it touches on my previous point of how we're sort of told things by ministers and the MOD, and it's not a sort of personal campaign, but we then receive an awful lot of evidence that points in the other way, and it places us in quite a difficult position where we then have to represent that. So is there, what is being done to maintain that proportionality and that fairness, ultimately that fairness to our servicemen and women?
Well, first let me respond to your point on the covenant, and I will read the SAFA report. The covenant is new, and I think you're absolutely right. We have to make sure it is working in practice and that more people are aware of it. And the obligations under the covenant fall not just to the ministry, but to all those who signed it. And it's very important to me that branches of government, whether they're local councils or GP clinics or health trusts, or indeed the big companies that have signed the covenant, that they do abide by it and not simply gain the credit of signing it, but that it is implemented on the ground. We will continue to look at that implementation, stage by stage, and we do need to make sure more people are aware of it. On IHAT, I think it's important to step back a little bit. We are obliged under the law of this House, as well as under the law of Parliament, as well as under international law, to examine any allegations that are made against members of the armed forces. That's a legal obligation. We can't escape that. We have to do it. And if we don't do it, then we would expect the International Criminal Court to get more involved in investigating allegations that are made against members of our armed forces. And in successive rulings, our own judges have made it clear that will become more and more likely if we don't demonstrate that these allegations are being properly looked at. Now, to my mind, what is really important is to separate out the serious allegations from a whole load of stuff that is clearly being concocted, and to make sure the serious allegations have resources devoted to them, that they are those things are investigated properly, and that we know exactly what happened. So far as service personnel are concerned, we provide training to assist them in what is required under international humanitarian law in the first place, and then of course through a duty of care we offer further assistance when they are subject to specific allegations. No amount of training, of course, can protect a soldier against a false allegation. It still, unfortunately, has to be looked at to see whether there is any substance to it. And what I think is important is we devote the right resource to this to be able to deal with allegations that are manifestly false and don't have any prospect of being stood up in a court, that we deal with those as quickly as possible so that the team can start to focus on the more serious allegations.
On that, can I just ask you two questions? Firstly, why is France or the United States not having this particular problem? And secondly, with the nobody misses the point of that we have to investigate allegations. Of course we do. If we are to uphold the standards that we sign up to and that we work bloody hard to achieve, we need to do that. But I find it hard to accept that the people who should bear that brunt are our servicemen and women, in terms of how long it takes to investigate claims, in terms of the practices adopted by the IHAT team. And the truth is, there are many soldiers and officers up and down this land, not just privates and lance corporals, but commanding officers who feel totally betrayed by this process. So, and they don't misunderstand the point that we must investigate allegations. Does that not suggest that something somewhere has gone badly wrong?
Well, so far as other countries are concerned, I think the United States doesn't recognise the International Criminal Court, so their armed forces are in a different position. And France, for example, has a reservation on the application of the Convention of Human Rights to its forces. Now, we've chosen in this country not to do that. We've chosen to abide by these international obligations. Had we done that, it might well have deterred a whole series of these particular claims. I think it's important to that where there are credible allegations of criminal conduct, that they are properly investigated. I don't think anybody in the army would resile from that. They have to be investigated. And as I've said, it is important that we clear away those that quite clearly can't be stood up. At the moment, there haven't been any court-martials under the IHAT procedure. I believe there's only so far been one summary hearing as a result of the investigations into a whole series of cases. So it may be that very few of them actually can be substantiated.
And it's fair to say, that you and the ministerial team and the last Prime Minister and the Attorney General are really trying to advance this cause, but it seems to be something entirely of our own making. If we have, found ourselves in a position that France or the United States or any other of our allies are in, where we are essentially asking our men and women at the bottom of the chain to bear the brunt for a situation we seem to have got ourselves into.
Well, we have subscribed to the International Criminal Court, and there is advantage to Britain in that international machinery and bringing people to justice and so on. There are other benefits to our country from being members on it. Other countries, took a different view, but Mr. Watkins may want to add to that.
Well, I think it's an extremely complex situation. There are a number of factors that have contributed to this. As the Secretary of State said, France was relatively late in signing the European Convention on Human Rights and placed a reservation, which does seem to have deterred these sorts of claims in France. I think there's also a factor here with the nature of the operations that we were involved with in Iraq and in Afghanistan. They were classical counterinsurgency operations. They involved a lot of contact, as those operations do, with the populace, and that provided opportunities for people to make what in a number of cases have turned out to be false claims. So there's factors like that. Dare I say, there may be something about our own legal system, and certain companies have taken opportunities given to them as well.